While out hunting in the mountains, a boy stumbled upon a strange-looking stone. He thought it was a priceless gem. Little did he know, it was actually an ancient dragon egg. Completely unaware, Eragon brought the gem to the butcher shop. He planned to trade the gem for some meat. The butcher stared at the glowing stone and immediately revealed a look of greed. But the moment he learned it had been found deep in the mountains, his expression changed completely. He quickly handed the strange egg back to the boy and told him to leave immediately, otherwise, it could bring disaster upon the entire town. Eragon didn't understand why the butcher was so nervous. In the end, with no better option, he stored the gem in his family's barn. Strangely, before Eragon could even leave, the stone began to tremble on its own. It seemed like something inside was trying to break free. Eragon stepped closer, trying to get a better look. Suddenly, a winged creature burst out of the shell. Eragon couldn't believe it. The gem was actually a dragon egg. Curious, he slowly reached out his hand to touch the baby dragon, but just then, a blinding light filled the room. Elsewhere, in 3 completely different locations, 3 people suddenly awoke from their sleep. They all seemed to sense the birth of the baby dragon at the same time. When Eragon came to, he discovered a dragon-shaped mark had appeared on his palm. The hungry hatchling began to grow restless. Eragon took out a bag of milk and tried to feed it, but the dragon didn't seem interested. It bit straight through the bag. Just then, a sound came from behind the dragon. It leapt forward and dove straight into a pile of hay. It had spotted a large rat hiding inside. The dragon had already devoured most of it in one gulp. A few days later, Eragon began training with the dragon in the wild. By this time, the dragon had grown significantly, and it quickly mastered the skill of flight. As Eragon watched the dragon disappear into the sky, he thought it might be leaving him forever. Suddenly, the dragon-shaped mark on his palm began to glow. Eragon instinctively looked up into the clouds. Within moments, the baby dragon transformed into a massive, full-grown dragon. The giant creature made a perfect landing right in front of him. Seeing a legendary dragon standing before his very eyes, Eragon was overwhelmed with awe and questions, but what he didn't expect was that the dragon could actually hear his thoughts. Only then did the dragon realize that Eragon was the dragon rider it had waited 1,000 years to find. Eragon, however, had no idea what a dragon rider even was. Over 1,000 years ago, it was a group of dragon riders who protected the land of Alagaesia, but later, a rider named Galbatorix betrayed them. He led his followers in a brutal assault. In the end, Galbatorix slaughtered the other dragon riders and successfully seized the throne. Under his reign, war broke out again and again. He wiped out anyone who dared defy him. Those lucky enough to survive had no choice but to flee into the mountains. They've been patiently waiting for a miracle ever since. Until just a few days ago, the story finally took a turn. The elf princess Arya stole the last remaining dragon egg from the king. Galbatorix immediately sent the dark sorcerer Durza to hunt her down, though Durza eventually caught up with Arya. At the critical moment, Arya used magic to teleport the egg away. That egg ended up in the hands of a hunting boy Eragon. Arya, however, was captured and imprisoned by Durza. At the very moment the dragon egg hatched in Eragon's barn, King Galbatorix sensed a threat to his rule. He immediately ordered Durza to send soldiers after Eragon and the hatchling. Using dark magic, Durza summoned the deadly creatures known as the Arazak. He was determined to eliminate both the boy and the dragon before they could form a bond as rider and steed. Meanwhile, Eragon had no idea the danger that now surrounded him. As he passed through the village, he overheard a man speaking of ancient dragon legends. Eragon was instantly intrigued. The man's name was Brahm. He seemed to know quite a bit about the history of the dragon riders, but nearby soldiers overheard them speaking ill of the king. They quickly surrounded them and drove Brahm away. Still curious, Eragon secretly made his way to Brahm's home, but Brahm, acting out of character, refused to share anything about dragons. Disappointed, Eragon turned to leave. Only after he left did Brahm pull out an old, long-hidden sword. It wasn't that Brahm didn't want to tell him the truth. He was simply afraid that doing so would get Eragon killed. What Brahm didn't realize was that Durza's Arazak had already arrived in the village. They captured the butcher and tortured him for information about the dragon egg. Under pressure, the butcher gave up Eragon's home address. Outside the house, Eragon lay flat on the ground, narrowly avoiding being seen. He watched in horror as the Arazak rushed toward his home. Sensing something terrible was about to happen, Eragon sprinted toward his house at full speed. His elderly uncle was still there, alone. At that moment, the dragon also arrived. Since Eragon still didn't know how to ride a dragon, the beast scooped him up with its claws and carried him home. But even so, they were still too late. Eragon's uncle had already perished. Just then, Brum appeared behind Eragon. He saw the dragon-shaped mark on the boy's palm, and his suspicions were finally confirmed. Eragon was the one chosen by the dragon. Without hesitation, Brum set fire to Eragon's home and quickly led him to a safe place. There, Brum told Eragon to summon the dragon, because if he wanted revenge, he had to find the reclusive Varden rebels. But the journey would be long and full of danger. The only way to travel safely and swiftly was for Eragon to learn how to ride the dragon. The scene shifts, and Brum builds a solid dragon saddle for Eragon. Next, Eragon is about to begin his true training in dragon riding. This is Eragon's very first attempt at flight. The dragon's speed is astonishing. It can accelerate to full speed in less than a second. Eragon turns around, trying to stand on the dragon's back mid-flight, but the powerful wind currents make it impossible to stay balanced. The dragon tells Eragon that when their minds become one, they can harness the full strength of dragon magic. Suddenly, Eragon's eyes turn deep blue, and in an instant, his vision multiplies 1,000-fold. Objects miles away appear right in front of him. Just as Eragon is marveling at this ability, he suddenly senses danger approaching. Two monstrous creatures emerge from the forest, chasing after Brum. The Arazak have already found them. Eragon steers the dragon, racing through the forest at high speed, but he flies straight into the Arazak's ambush. One of them tries to strike Eragon from behind, but Brum arrives just in time and easily takes it down. Eragon is stunned by Brum's abilities. A mere human, facing Arazak, shows no fear, and can even kill it with ease. Suspicious and curious, Eragon confronts Brum, but Brum refuses to say anything. Eragon grabs his hand and forces it open. There, on Brum's palm, is a faded dragon-shaped mark. It turns out Brum was once a dragon rider too. Years ago, his dragon was killed by the king in battle. Since then, Brum fell into despair and lived in hiding, until Eragon came along and gave him hope for revenge. That's why Brum chose to guide Eragon in seeking out the remaining survivors, to unite and overthrow the king's brutal rule. After 2 consecutive failed assassination attempts, Durza was consumed with rage. With a wave of his hand, he executed the useless Arazak leader. He then made his way to the cell where the elf princess Arya was imprisoned. There, Durza cast a dark spell on her. He used it to lure Eragon to the castle through a dream. When Eragon awoke, he ignored Brum's warnings, mounted his dragon, and flew straight toward the castle. Eragon disguised himself as a soldier and successfully infiltrated the fortress. Using his enhanced vision, he quickly located the chamber where Arya was being held, but the entire setup was a trap laid by Durza. In front of Durza, every one of Eragon's attacks proved useless. Durza summoned a spear and hurled it viciously at Eragon. At the critical moment, Brum leapt forward, taking the fatal blow for him. Furious, Eragon grabbed his sword and struck at Durza, but the sorcerer easily parried the attack. Eragon then managed to land a hit to Durza's head, yet the dark sorcerer seemed completely unfazed. He simply dissolved into a cloud of black smoke and vanished. With the help of the dragon, the 3 of them managed to escape the castle, though they reached a safe place. Brum's injuries were far too severe, he was barely hanging on. Eragon tried everything he could to save him, but in the end, his power just wasn't enough to give Brum a dignified farewell. The dragon let him ride once more as a dragon rider. Brum lay across the dragon's back and slowly closed his eyes for the last time. Eragon built a simple grave for him with stones. Then the dragon exhaled a breath of freezing magic, sealing the tomb in ice. This would preserve Brum's body for eternity. Now, Eragon would set off on his journey of vengeance. Soon, Eragon and Arya found the survivors hidden deep in the mountains. The moment they saw the dragon arrive, hope finally returned to their faces. They quickly began drafting a plan to defeat the king. Weapons were forged throughout the night. Meanwhile, King Galbatorix learned the location of the survivors' hideout. He ordered Durza to gather all forces and wipe them out in one swift blow. An epic battle was about to begin. Eragon donned the long-forgotten dragon rider armor. By then, the king's army was already closing in. As the stone wall was blasted apart, enemy troops flooded in. At that moment, the entire village placed their hope in Eragon and his dragon. Watching from afar, Durza erupted with fury. He summoned a fearsome black dragon of darkness. Durza's power surged to terrifying heights. He shrugged off every magical attack. With a single wave of his hand, he caused a massive explosion. Even the fire unleashed by Eragon's dragon was swatted away effortlessly by Durza's palm. The dragon, now gravely wounded, cried out in pain. Its vision began to blur. At the crucial moment, it shielded Eragon from a fatal blow. Just as Eragon fell from the sky, the dragon used the last of its strength to catch him and held him tightly against its chest. Then, it crashed hard to the ground. The dragon lay there, barely breathing. It was moments from death. Eragon tried to save it by offering up his own life force, but he had exhausted all his strength in the fight, and fainted. The next morning, Eragon awoke from unconsciousness, and to his greatest relief, the dragon was miraculously still alive. From that day forward, Eragon became the last dragon rider. He devoted himself to protecting peace across the land, allowing people to once again live safe and prosperous lives.